And my fellow Louisianans, thank you for being here today. And I want to pause and thank Brother Rodney Woods for his prayer. Not only today, but his prayer every single day. He has been a faithful servant here for many years, and I am so proud to know him and to call him my friend and my brother. Thank you, Rodney. And also, the cadets from LSU, the Pershing Rifles, for presenting the colors today. That's special for us, given the long military history and tradition that LSU has with the Pershing Rifles, the old war school. And also Hannah Rice, who know him and had an opportunity to my brother. Thank you, Rodney. This past December when we visited her school in Natchitoches. What a wonderful, beautiful job she did singing the national anthem. Sort of seems like we just did this. I know you haven't been away for very long. I hope that in the past week you've had time to rest and to refocus on the work that we have ahead of us. And especially, I don't want the roadblocks of the special session to hamper us from what's most important, making life better for the people of this great state. While I'm extremely disappointed in the way things ended last week, as I suspect many of you are, I want to thank the many members of this body, the House and the Senate, the vast majority, who understood how important it was to work together towards a solution. It was encouraging to see so many of you stand right here at this well, urging your fellow legislators to put the people we serve ahead of the distracting political games. Very soon, we're going to have another opportunity, our last opportunity to fix the fiscal cliff, as we should have done in the special session. If the recent warning sign from one of our credit rating agencies is not enough to urge us to act, perhaps this story will be. I just heard of a young man who's heading off to college next fall from Dutchtown. He had 33 on the ACT. He's an Eagle Scout, a model student right here in our state. After the last special session, unfortunately, he is leaning towards going to Alabama rather than LSU because of the uncertainty of his top scholarship. That's the kind of story that we should all dread. Losing to Alabama in the classroom should be every bit as painful as losing to them on the football field. And it's time we start winning on both. We should dread it because despite the lack of action during the legislative session, we really have so much to be optimistic about in our state. We should dread it because despite the lack of action during the legislative session in Louisiana, if only we can move beyond the problems of the past. Every day the state of our state grows stronger, and when you look at the accomplishments we've made this past year, it's easy to see that our momentum is driven by the people of this great state. At 4.6%, unemployment is at its lowest level in a decade, and in 2017 we saw record employment in construction, education, and health care. We are chipping away at our nearly $14 billion backlog of infrastructure projects, and although it's not nearly enough, we are finding new and innovative ways to deliver key priorities to communities around the state. Just in January, we announced $650 million in funding that will be used to construct 3 major projects: the widening of I-10 from the Mississippi River Bridge to the I-10-12 split, a new interchange, yeah, that's worthy of some applause, a new interchange on I-10 in Kenner at the Loyola Drive for the new airport terminal, a $1 billion terminal coming online next year. And for the folks in northwest Louisiana, new access from I-20 to Barksdale Air Force Base. Just last week, it was announced that Site Selection Magazine has once again ranked Louisiana among the top 10 states in the country for economic development investment on a per capita basis. Area Development ranks us among the top 5 states for doing business, and Thumbtack ranks us in the top 4 in the nation for small business friendliness. In 2017 alone, we landed 43 new projects totaling $4.6 billion in capital investment in parishes all across the state of Louisiana, including DXC Technologies, which is being hailed as the second best economic development deal in the country last year and certainly the largest in the history of Louisiana. With these projects, we added over 13,000 new direct and indirect jobs, and overall, nearly 24,000 more Louisianans gained employment. That wasn't an accident. When Stephen Hilton, the executive vice president of DXC, explained why they chose New Orleans, he said that it was not only a place that could attract millennials, but also the next generation of talent. Time after time, the business community is saying yes to Louisiana, yes to new investments, yes to expansion projects, yes to maintaining existing businesses. And they are saying yes because we have a vision for our state and our people. And I'd like to recognize one of those companies today, Andy Johnson with Graphic Packaging. Andy, would you please stand and be recognized? Last spring, we announced that Graphic Packaging International would be reinvesting in Northeast Louisiana with a new 1.27 million square foot carton manufacturing and logistics center in Monroe. That state-of-the-art center will be one of the largest and most efficient anywhere in the world. Today, Graphic Packaging employs 1,000 people at 3 Northeast Louisiana facilities and produces $4.7 billion in annual economic output. Andy, we thank you and Graphic Packaging. We thank you for being such outstanding partners and ambassadors for our state. Mike, I thought you would like that. Thank you for your vision and your commitment to our future as well. These economic successes over the last year are driven by our dedication to a trained workforce capable of handling the good-paying jobs the private sector is creating. By transforming our approach to higher education, meaning that when we adequately fund higher education, we're making an investment in our future, in our children, in our economy. We have been able to deliver big wins for our state. This year, our current fiscal year, for the first time in a decade, we finally stabilized funding for higher education. This has resulted in an increase in admission requests at our universities and community and technical colleges across the board, signaling to industries around the world that we are ready to invest in workforce development, and to our students that we believe in their future and that we want their future to be right here in Louisiana. Unfortunately, however, that's not the message that was sent from this body last week. Enrollment isn't going to continue trending upward without a stable budget. We've seen the consequences of this already. So just remember, when a special session goes by without any action, you're not failing me. You're failing that kid from Dutchtown and the thousands of others like him around the state. In order to have productive workers, you also need healthy workers, which is why we're also committed to improving health outcomes in Louisiana. The best news is that our approach is working. Medicaid expansion continues to change lives. Over 460,000 working people have enrolled as of our most recent count. Our uninsured rate has been sliced by more than half, and expansion is producing savings for our budget. Most importantly, though, Medicaid expansion is saving lives. Yes. Additionally, expansion is helping us address Louisiana's opioid crisis by giving more people access to the treatment that they need. Through expansion, nearly 16,000 people have received inpatient or outpatient treatment for substance abuse. That is 16,000 more people who have a second chance at life and 16,000 fewer families who will have to suffer the heartbreak of losing a loved one to addiction. We reduced the number We reduced the number of opioid prescriptions last year by 15%. And for Medicaid patients, there's been a 40% decrease in the amount of opioids prescribed since the first month of expansion in July 2016. If you doubt even for a second the importance of Medicaid expansion in fighting the opioid epidemic, just ask one of the guests I'm pleased to have with us today. Khadijah Lamroui, please stand and be recognized. Khadijah is employed as a mental health technician. She had applied for Medicaid years ago but wasn't eligible. Like so many, she fell into the gap of not qualifying for traditional Medicaid, but she also didn't receive coverage through her work because it was unaffordable. And like so many, Khadijah struggled with opioid addiction. After receiving health care through expansion, she was able to receive treatment through the Oxford House. And on April 4th, less than a month from now, she will have reached her one-year milestone of sobriety. Khadijah, Khadijah, it took a lot of courage for you to be here and to share your story with us, and I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Speaking of second chances, last year we came together and passed the most comprehensive and bipartisan criminal justice reform measures in the history of our state. When I ran for governor, I said that by the end of my first term, Louisiana would lose its decades-long position as the nation's top incarcerator by making strategic changes to our criminal justice system that will improve public safety and in turn save our state money that we can reinvest in programs to reduce recidivism and crime. We knew that the status quo wasn't working and our outdated practices weren't making us any safer. Not only that, we were hemorrhaging money on a system that wasn't addressing the root problems to reduce crime and recidivism. Well, very soon we'll be able to say that we no longer lead the nation in imprisonment, and we have already exceeded our expected savings goals for the first year. But it's now up to us to be disciplined enough to make good on our promise, our pledge to the people of Louisiana, to reinvest 70% of the savings to actually improve public safety. And we did that by working together, by bringing together the business community, religious leaders, Republicans, Democrats, independents, community leaders, and law enforcement. And we are writing a new chapter for Louisiana. And we didn't agree on everything, but we talked, we compromised. There was give and take among everyone, and that should be our guiding principle going into this regular session and beyond. I realize that there are politicians peddling fear and scare tactics. But by focusing on nonviolent, non-sex offenders and strategies successfully implemented in other southern conservative states, you summon the courage to change course. And I'm confident that we are on the road to safer communities. Those other states saw their crime rates decline significantly. We followed that same model here in Louisiana, and we're going to see the same results. Now, criminal justice brought people of different viewpoints together. In a similar way, we were brought together with our neighbors in other states last year due to natural disasters. I've always known that the people of Louisiana are generous and resilient. We proved that more than ever over the past couple of years. 2016 was a year of loss for far too many Louisianans. And yet when hurricanes pummeled our neighbors last year, the same people who had lost everything in floods just a year before hauled out their boats and went to the aid of fellow Americans from Texas to Florida to Puerto Rico. So I want to thank take a moment and thank those individuals. The Cajun Navy, the National Guard, the State Police, the Wildlife and Fisheries agents, the folks at the Fire Marshal's office who actually went into Southeast Texas and conducted rescue operations and evacuated thousands of our neighbors to Louisiana, where they could be sheltered in Alexandria and Shreveport. And Don and I had the opportunity personally to visit the shelter in Alexandria on multiple times, and we saw the compassion that our workers, especially those at DCFS, put into taking care of our neighbors from Texas. In fact, the governor of Texas called me multiple times to thank me for the excellent way in which his people were being taken care of. And we have with us today 3 of the individuals who helped run the Alexandria Mega Shelter: Daniel Doyle, Charlotte Thomas, and Kim McCain. Would y'all please stand and be recognized? We want to thank you for the long days and even longer nights you and your colleagues spent providing a safe and welcoming environment for the victims of last year's hurricanes. In addition to their disaster efforts, DCFS has been working to ensure that every child in its care has a permanent and loving home. DCFS was one of 8 states to receive a national grant to develop strategies to recruit and retain highly skilled child welfare workers. In 2017, we reunited nearly 2,600 children with their birth families. And for a second year in a row, we set another adoption record with 771 children finding their forever home by being adopted. These are our children, Louisiana's children, and we've given them a brighter tomorrow. And one of the families is here today who's responsible for this success. Dawn and David Moss have 3 biological children, but they knew that there was room in their home and in their hearts for more. So they answered the call to become foster parents. And after fostering children for 6 years, they officially grew their family by 5 when they adopted Aubrey, who is 8, Thomas, who is 7, Emmett, who is 6, Zane, who is 5, and Lucy, who is 3. My brother Daniel is here with us. That reminds us of our family growing up. My mama had 8 kids in 10 years. Looked just like that. I also want to give a round of applause to the DCFS worker who helped make this possible as an adoption specialist. Judy Batiste, would you please stand and get a round of applause? This session, we're going to be building on all these accomplishments and so much more. I'm teaming up with and partnering with the Republicans, Democrats, Independents alike. We're building on that incredible wave of momentum, soliciting ideas from all across the state, the business community, small business owners, seniors, students, parents, and law enforcement. The legislative agenda I am proposing to you today is as bold and diverse as the people of our great state. Small businesses make up 99.5% of all businesses in Louisiana and employ over half of our workforce. They aren't just the backbone of our economy, they're at the very heart of all businesses in Louisiana. That's why it's important to cultivate an environment that will allow small businesses to flourish. I am asking you to create a Louisiana Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council charged with helping small businesses remain competitive in Louisiana. We are cutting through the red tape and giving small businesses regulatory relief that costs them money and that are overly burdensome. Louisiana ranks as the 6th worst in the nation for convoluted occupational licensing requirements. We can fix that to ensure we are maximizing our efforts to provide regulatory relief. I have directed my cabinet to review all regulations, especially related to small businesses, and identify areas where we can provide relief. Further, we will be establishing an occupational licensing review. First up, repealing licensing requirements for florists, which we are the only state in the nation to require. In addition, we're going to make it easier for the spouses and children of military families to get occupational licensing so that they can support their families when they are stationed here in Louisiana or have to be separated from their loved ones during a deployment. You know, service members are not the only ones who make sacrifices for our country. Their families do as well. And I know personally how difficult it is to uproot your family and move every few years when you serve in the military. So we want to make it easier for military families who come to Louisiana to get the licensing they need to seamlessly continue their careers here. Therefore, we will be taking several measures to enter into multi-state licensure compacts and waiving certain fees for military families. The impacts of our efforts to streamline government will be far-reaching. Let's make it easier for families to get out and enjoy the natural beauty Louisiana has to offer. This is the sportsman's paradise, after all. So our efforts will seek to streamline recreational hunting and fishing licenses by reducing the number of licenses from 117 to 30. We will also build on our efforts to end childhood hunger in Louisiana, where 1 in 4 children remain in poverty. Last year, Don and I launched the Louisiana's No Kid Hungry initiative. In October, we held the first statewide breakfast challenge, and 306 schools participated, providing over 147,000 more meals to students. This session, we will ensure that students are not stigmatized when they cannot afford to pay for a meal. When we are able to give students a well-balanced meal at the start of the day, they perform better, they are less likely to act out, which allows our teachers to focus their efforts on teaching. One of the things I've learned to serving as the chair of the Southern Region Education Board is that improving public education should never be a competition among states, but rather a collaborative effort to learn from each other. Therefore, we will create the Early Childhood Care and Education Commission, which will work closely in partnership with the National Governors Association. And recognizing the hard work of our teachers, we will support legislation that will allow them to acquire tenure if they have effective or highly effective ratings for 5 out of 6 years. And knowing that value-added model for teacher evaluation was not implemented as intended by its creators and by its principal champion, your own Frank Hoffman, we will reduce the part of the value-added model that it plays in teachers' evaluation from 35% to 15% to promote fairness and consistency for our teachers. And understandably, there's a national conversation happening right now about how we can better protect children when they are at schools. As this conversation moves forward, we must drown out the political noise and focus on the issue at hand. We must work together by bringing in law enforcement, school officials, educators, parents, and students. Our priority is public safety for our children, and I know that we can have a constructive dialogue here in Louisiana over the course of this session and advance this cause. And then further increase opportunities for all children, we must find ways to lift families out of poverty. Sadly, Louisiana has the 2nd highest poverty rate in the country and the 3rd highest child poverty rate. I'm committed to doing everything in my power to change that narrative, which is why we will be coordinating a strategic effort among state departments with the Moving Families from Poverty to Empowerment Strategic Plan. A critical part of this effort is establishing a minimum wage that produces a modest but meaningful increase and passing the Louisiana Equal Pay Act. Louisiana has the highest wage inequity in the entire country. everyone in this room and listening wherever you are should be offended that a woman makes only 66 cents for every dollar a man makes. She doesn't get charged less when she goes to buy groceries for her family, and she shouldn't get paid any less when she works the same job as a man. This should be easy. This should be easy. 91% of the people of Louisiana support the Louisiana Equal Pay Act. And why? Because it's the right thing to do. It's just that simple. Same goes for raising the minimum wage. 18 states raised their minimum wage at the beginning of 2018, and yet Louisiana remains one of only 5 states not to have adopted a state minimum wage at all. $7.25 in 2018 is not a fair wage. So let's raise the minimum wage. Let's raise the minimum wage to $8.50 per hour over 2 years. Additionally, we must confront the horrific reality that more women die during pregnancy and childbirth in Louisiana than just about anywhere else in the country. It's 2018. Women should not be dying at such an alarming rate because of childbirth. So I've tasked the Louisiana Department of Health with examining the factors contributing to the increased cases of maternal mortality in our state and developing an extensive report on the policies and practice recommendations that we can implement. And while I'm speaking to you today, at least 2 children will be born. We may never meet them directly, but what we do here or don't do here will profoundly affect them. Chances are, by the way, they'll be born in a rural hospital. Our actions directly affect whether that mother can get to that hospital in time for a safe, healthy delivery. And we owe it to mothers to make Louisiana a safe and sound place to give birth and to build a family. I also firmly believe that every person, whether they work in state government or private industry, should be able to go to work each day without fear of sexual harassment or discrimination. I have said repeatedly that sexual harassment will not be tolerated in the state of Louisiana, nor will we allow victims to feel bullied or silenced. I created a task force to address these very issues. I have received their recommendations and reviewed best practices from around the country, and we are now ready to begin implementing these changes here in Louisiana. They include lifting the veil of secrecy by prohibiting employers from mandating forced arbitration, protecting the identity of individuals reporting instances of sexual harassment or discrimination from public disclosure, and requiring annual sexual harassment training for all public employees and elected officials. And we're not just protecting our workers, we're also standing up for our students. One of the scariest moments of a parent's life is when you're sending your kid off to college. Last fall, we lost an 18-year-old student who had his entire life ahead of him. And no family should ever have to feel the pain that Max Groover's family is currently feeling. And no student should feel pressured into or subjected to reckless and life-threatening hazing rituals. That is why we will support legislation requiring hazing prevention education. Arming students with the knowledge to identify and report instances of hazing could very easily save lives down the road. Finally, I believe that as a society we are judged by how well we treat our young and our old, and right now we're not doing enough to protect our aging population from abuse at the hands of caregivers, strangers, or sometimes even family members. Therefore, we will strengthen the penalties for sexual violence against the elderly. We will also work to curb the financial exploitation of seniors by requiring suspicious activity be reported to financial institutions or flagged by the banks themselves. These are just some of the priorities that I've set for this regular session. As I hope you can see, the vast majority of these bills are efforts that I know that we can all get behind. And we know that we have difficult work ahead of us. In this session, you're also supposed to pass a budget. As I've said before, I don't support the budget recommendations that I was constitutionally obligated to present to you back in January because it is not a reasonable option for our state. It doesn't fund adequately our critical priorities, and I'm certain that the majority of you agree with that. I especially know that your constituents, our constituents, want us to do better. That is why we should have fixed the fiscal cliff when I gave you the opportunity a couple of weeks ago. However, many of you have suggested that the fiscal cliff can be solved simply by making cuts. I think what many of you will find is that it's much harder than it seems, because when you cut funding, you cut services that many people in this state rely upon. But if that's what you truly believe, now is your opportunity. To those who say we can cut our way out of this, it's your time to step up to the plate and make the specific cuts that you insist can and should be made. I remain of the opinion that we need to end this session in mid-May, as the President and the Speaker and I discussed, so that we can enter into another special session at no additional expense to taxpayers that will conclude no later than June 4th, when the regular session is scheduled to conclude. And no, it's not going to be easy. I never said that it would be. Nobody said it would be easy, but it is necessary. However, the things that we can accomplish over this regular session should be relatively easy, and they will be, if we will just engage in a civil discourse. If we will treat one another as colleagues and this body as a collegial body, we can actually find ways to come together and do those things that we agree upon. The hard becomes possible. But if we take the opposite approach, the hard becomes impossible. And our people deserve better than that. And by the way, we are better than that. So let's make life better for workers throughout our industries, for students, for children in need, for seniors, for emergency responders and teachers, for business owners, for military families, for the vulnerable and the poor, for your family, for my family. The state of Louisiana is great precisely because our people have dared to be great. And we have some remarkable things going for us. And we have the natural resources and booming industries. We've got the largest port, not only in America, but in the entire Western Hemisphere. We've got bright young minds who want to stay here as long as we can give them the opportunity to be successful. I have always known that Louisiana is the greatest state in the nation. Now let's prove it to the rest of the world. You know, there's a quote etched into one of the cornerstones of this great building that says, "We live for those we love." Every single one of us is here today because we love this state. We love its people. And that love is what brings us back, session after session, year after year, and work towards solutions for the problems that we face and to get the prosperity that we know that is within our reach. And together, we can leave behind an even greater Louisiana for those we love. And I'm not just optimistic. I am supremely confident. Louisiana's best days are ahead. So let's get there. Let's do it together. May God bless you. God bless the United States of America and the great state of Louisiana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor, for those remarks. I know all of us in the House and the Senate are looking forward to working together for the betterment of this state and to try to work with you in accomplishing those goals. But thank you very much for your comment. Senator Long now.